This week, I was having a conversation with an individual that I casually knew at the grocery store. I was picking up some bread, one of my staples, and this person and I were having a conversation. And this individual was a devout Christian. And this individual was talking politics, and he was quite radical in his politics. And I asked this individual, as he was speaking the politics he was, and knowing that he was a Christian, because he touts that quite frequently, I said, let me ask a question. In the conversation that you were just having to me, were you expressing love? Were you following in the footsteps of Jesus? And were you expressing love? And he was going, well, I said, I didn't ask that. Let me ask the question a different way, I said to him. Were you in judgment? He says, well, that isn't judgment. I said, were you in judgment? And he said, yes. And I said, so you're not in love, because judgment and love cannot coexist. And I said, so if you're in judgment, in that moment, you're not a Christian, because you're not following the teachings of Jesus. And I got a look that he was so startled, because he had never, ever thought about it that way. You see, he had this self-talk going on within him that he could be a Christian, believe in the teachings of Jesus, and be judgmental. But he hadn't considered the fact that judgment and love cannot coexist. So that's why I chose today to talk, my talk title today is The Power of Self-Talk. You see, I understand that what we say determines our life experience. You see, what we talk about becomes our reality. Because think about this, if you're talking about something over and over again, it means you're thinking about it over and over again. And if you're having the desire to talk about it, you're probably feeling it at the deepest level. You've got high emotions behind it. And if you're talking it all the time, then you're probably acting it out. Well, you know what? That's a belief. And what happens with beliefs? They become our reality. Our beliefs create our experience. So what we speak out into the world becomes our reality. So when we're thinking about this, we got to ask the question then, if our talking, our self-talk creates a reality, who is doing the talking? That's a really good question. Who is doing the talking? Is it the higher you, or is it your ego? And when I refer to the higher you could also say the heart center. So when I go to the ego, I said, is it the judgment side of you? If I go to the heart center, I go, is it the love side of you? You know, this has been an interesting week. And there's a lot of judgment going on with the news that our president has COVID-19. I can tell you the second I heard that the president of the United States and the others had COVID-19, I went into prayer that they would heal quickly. Because in the United States, it's important that the president be healthy. I don't care what you think about the man. I'm not going to be in judgment. I accept who he is. I don't have to agree with him. I accept who he is, and I wish him health. I wish his wife health. I wish his staff health, because that's what love does. Love is always for more life. I bring this out because I don't know what your political preference is. I don't know how you're looking at all of this, but if you are wishing ill upon anyone, I'm going to suggest that you're not in love. And then I ask the question, is that who you truly are? And is that who you truly want to be? You know, and then what I find is that people who are speaking in judgment, that are not in love, I then go in my own mind and ask, are they conscious or are they unconscious? Are they really speaking consciously or unconsciously? And what I find for the most part, most people are speaking unconsciously. They built a habit out of somewhere, and that habit just gets regurgitated out of them without any thought whatsoever. And that's just fascinating as you watch the world. And so I always like to ask this question: am I having open-ended, expansive conversations? Or are my conversations, I want to prove a point? And you see, that's the interesting thing. When you're having a conversation and the answer is yes or no, there's no expansion going on. There's no possibility of seeing things in a bigger way, in a bigger light, with new ideas. So when I'm conversing with people that are of different mindset, I want to ask open-ended questions to find out what is it that's influencing them, and is it something I haven't considered, so I might be more expansive in how I look at the world. Because here's what I do know. The universe is always in balance. And an individual may be speaking words I don't like, but at the same time, there's as much happening that is good that I perceive as bad. And if I'm aware of that, I can receive the good from that individual. I can receive new information from that individual. I don't shut down everything. Does that make sense? People are saying this is the worst of times right now because of COVID, because of racism and that. And at the same time, the environment has never been better because of the lack of travel, the lack of us burning fossil fuels and all of this. The environment is actually better. There are people who are thriving in this. The human race is building up antibodies and is actually becoming healthier because it's exposed to this. Maybe not each individual, but the human race is building up immunities to this that will serve the human race. So you see, you've got to really bring this out. And when you're looking at what is the positive coming out of it, you've got to take a bigger, broader perspective. Right now, all of the hatred that's being shown is really letting us know that that hatred has always been there. It's now coming to the surface. And until it comes to the surface, it can't be healed. You can't heal a disease until you know you have the disease. So I look at all this and I say that life is in balance. And where do I want to put my attention? I want to put my attention on growing, becoming more, experiencing life, because I'm consciously doing that. Here's a great question to ask yourself. Are you mirroring what everyone else is saying? Or do you think for yourself? Are you mirroring when you talk about politics, what your parents think? Are you mirroring what your corporation thinks? Are you mirroring what your friends think? Or are you thinking for yourself? I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat. I'm an independent. What I do is I think for myself, and when I walk into the polling booth, I vote for who I believe in that moment will do the best for the entire country and the world. That's how I vote. I may not like either candidate, but I'm going to vote for the candidate that I believe will do the best for the world. I don't care what you say about your candidate. I'm at choice. And that's what I ask you to be. Stop caring what other people think. You were born a unique, whole, and perfect individual. You were given the God-darn ability to think. Isn't it time we all embrace it and think for ourselves? Let me ask this question. Would you want to listen to someone else who's talking about you the way you talk about yourself? That's a really good question. Would you want a person to be your friend who talks and speaks out loud your self-talk? And let me point that out. Let me really bring that out. There's no bigger critic in the world of you than you. No one is harder on you than yourself. No one thinks you're unworthy but you. Would you want another person like that to be your friend? If you wouldn't, then don't you think it's time you change who your best friend is, which is you? Don't you think it's time that you start talking differently about yourself? It's a good question to ask, because if you don't start talking differently, no one else will. You see, the most important step we take in this whole idea of learning how to better self-talk is that we have to begin to question everything. We don't make the assumption that we know something, but we remain open to new ideas, to new ways of looking at things, that I don't have to do this. I know my wife 4 weeks ago was told, you need to be on prescription meds. And she said, no, I don't. I need to change my diet and my exercise. And she did that. And she just went back and found out she didn't need to be on prescription meds. She took care of it herself because she asked questions outside of what was being told to her. And she was willing to step into her power. I'm asking you to think about that. You see, here's the biggest thing I can ask you today is, why not dedicate your life to becoming a master of how you communicate with yourself? You know, we in school, we were taught how to communicate. I was in school, I was in speech, I was in forensic speaking and all of that. And I learned to give a good talk. I learned to speak extemporaneously. I learned to give an oratory. I learned how to do interpretive reading. But no one taught me to be a master of communication with myself. What am I saying to myself, consciously and unconsciously? Once I got the idea that my self-talk created my experience, I began the process of changing 60 plus years of programming. Did you hear what I said? I have allowed myself, because of my lack of awareness, to be programmed to speak in a not a very loving way to myself. And I'm making a conscious effort now to change how I view Lee Wolak. And I invite you to change how you view you. I want you to now imagine what it would be like once you become a master of communication with yourself. And from this place, you begin to act and communicate with others. Think about that. If you became a master of communication with yourself, and having got that as the basis of who you are, how would that change your communication with everyone in your life? First off, when you master communication with your life, you are now truly in self-love. And if you're in self-love and you're communicating from there, now you're loving others. Because until you can accept yourself and speak from a place of acceptance, you do not love yourself. Until you can accept others where they are and speak to them without judgment, you are not loving them. We have to give the idea up that we have the power to change anyone else. And we have to embrace that all we have to do is change ourselves. And where we start is how we speak to ourselves when we are quiet and that little voice in our head is running rampant. Take a moment today and sit down and ask the question, what do I say to myself? And then make a promise, I will never, ever speak to myself without love ever again. You are worthy. You were brought here to be love. Claim it now and step into the great unknown.
I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask that you go to our website, agapecsl.com. Once there, click on the donate button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. Or if you would like, text your gift by simply dialing 972-532-6976. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to you in the world. I would ask that if you like this message, to please subscribe to my YouTube channel under my name, Lee Wolak. Again, I want to thank you for joining me in the Agape community as we learn how to better self-love through conscious living.